Well, welcome to another episode of Tree Lady Talks from an exceptionally wet part of northwest Essex, which I can say is not the situation which will be found in the area that we are focusing the podcast on today, will it?
No, I mean, I've got absolutely drenched this morning out on site, but we should be grateful because we're hearing from Tree Aid, a brilliant charity helping people in the drylands of Africa.
I'll get behind the kit. We've got a trailer coming up which explains a lot about what they do. We're interviewing some very important movers and shakers in the world of Tree Aid, and one of which is Shireen Chambers MBE.
Yes, Shireen is the chair of the trustees of Tree Aid.
George Bazongo.
He's the director of operations based in Burkina Faso.
And then we're talking to two intrepid fundraisers, and when I say intrepid, I'm not just talking about hopping around the corner and getting some sponsorship money. These two people are extraordinary. I really hope we can get James Ogilvie. I haven't heard from him yet, but I'll keep you updated on that one. So, Bell Martin, hold on a minute, I'll just get back in my seat. That's better. Lady who cycled around the North Coast 500 in Scotland, which is an area that Sharon and I know fairly well after we took a slight detour from Gretna Green, which to a certain age group will mean a lot, to another age group won't mean anything. Unfortunately, it looks like for this episode at least, James hasn't been able to make it, which is a terrible shame, but you never know, we might get him on another episode. Oh, wait a minute, wait, that could be him now, hold on a second. Hello, James? You can do it? Oh, that's absolutely brilliant. Okay, I'll set everything up. Thanks very much. Speak to you soon. Bye. Well, as you've just heard, James Ogilvie can do it, which is magnificent news. So we'll be talking to James Ogilvie, climber of the 7 summits for Tree Aid, at a later point in this podcast.
Well, without further ado, let's hear Tree Aid describe who they are and what they do.
Tree Aid helps people in the drylands of Africa to lift themselves out of poverty and protect their environment through the power of trees. In 2018 to 19, we had another record-breaking year. With your support, we helped almost 500,000 people, planted and regenerated almost 2.2 million trees, supported communities to sustainably manage almost 60,000 new hectares of forest and parkland, and nearly doubled household income through tree enterprises. Protecting and restoring natural resources is essential to slowing down the effects of climate change and stopping land degradation. In Ghana, we continued our work in partnership with Ecosia to restore and protect the Dakar River, which is drying up for a longer period each year. We worked with communities to grow 1 million trees along the river and trained 625 lead farmers on tree planting, farmer-managed natural regeneration and bushfire management skills. Our forest governance approach ensures that new trees thrive and forests are managed by the communities that depend upon them. Since 2007, Tree Aid has worked in Burkina Faso to support communities to have greater voice, access and control over local forests. As a result, 52 groups are now sustainably managing over 32,000 hectares of forest. Trees provide fruit and nuts that can be processed into products like shea butter and be sold to generate an income. Last year, across all our projects, we supported 565 enterprise groups by providing them with the tools, training and support they need. To date, these groups have generated an estimated £1.3 million in total revenue from selling their products. In the communities where we work, hunger and malnutrition are a daily threat. Trees provide a climate-resilient source of nutritious food in the drylands of Africa. In 2018 to 19, we planted 102 nutrition gardens in Burkina Faso, which are now providing nutritious food such as baobab to 14,500 households. None of this would have been possible without the generous support of individuals, trusts, corporates and institutions.
Thank you for believing the work we are doing. Thank you for all the support you are giving us.
Thank you for your support.
You're listening to Tree Lady Talks. This is Sharon Durden Hollenby. All music and production is by Noel Durden-Hollenby, and all views expressed by me or the interviewees are entirely personal. Welcome to Shireen Chambers MBE, Chair of Trustees of Tree Aid. Tell us about the organisation.
Well, it's a very exciting role to be Chair of Tree Aid. It's a wonderful organisation that's based in the UK and in the Sahel in Africa. So we have about 70 staff, split about half and half between the African countries that we work in and in Bristol, where our base is, where we do a lot of the fundraising work. Tree Aid was set up over 30 years ago as a response to Band-Aid, and I have no idea if your listeners are going to have any idea what Band-Aid is.
Oh my goodness, it makes me feel so old because it sounds like yesterday, and it was such a powerful movement, wasn't it? It got so many people knowledgeable and excited about how they could help Africa.
It was, and it was 1985. I know it because it was a huge concert around the world, rock concert, and it was set up to really combat poverty following drought in Ethiopia. And I think so many people were moved by it that they decided to do something more. And some foresters in Bristol decided that they would set up an organisation that could use trees to provide a lasting effect to the problems in Ethiopia and the whole of the Sahel. So providing famine relief is one thing that we all did in 1985. But foresters, as you know, think long term, and they thought that trees would be a solution. And so they set up Tree Aid in 1987. So we've been going over 30 years.
What is the overarching mission of the charity?
What it's about is enabling people in the drylands of Africa to unlock the potential of trees, to reduce poverty and to improve the environment. And what Tree Aid sees that's really key is that reducing poverty and protecting the environment go hand in hand.
Yep, that's right. And what has been the picture in the past? What are the challenges people face in the drylands of Africa? Have trees been removed for fuel?
Trees have absolutely been removed for fuel, for cooking, for building. The goats, actually, which are very, very valuable to a lot of communities in Africa. Let goats anywhere near a woodland and you know what happens to it, there's none left. But the main problem has been natural desertification. And when I say natural, that's not man-made locally. This is the climate crisis has really made this worse. Burkina Faso alone has 470,000 hectares of land degradation every year. That's a phenomenal amount. So basically the Sahara is just creeping south, and this is getting worse. And what has become much more acute over the last decade is then communities cannot feed themselves. They look for a better life somewhere else. And this is triggering emigration to Europe and other countries. And it's also triggering an awful lot of conflict in these areas where we work. So the people that we work with don't just have to deal with desertification of their land and their crops failing, but they also have to deal with conflict, which has got so much worse over the last decade in this area. It's pretty tough. Some of these are some of the toughest places in the world to live.
And also breakdown of communities and breakdown of families as people sort of go to the urban areas and emigrate. And this desertification, is it really escalating exponentially, or has it been a gradual process over the last couple of centuries?
I'm not actually sure, Sharon. I presume that the desert has been growing the way the rest of our habitats are increasingly becoming degraded. It has speeded up due to mankind over the last few decades, certainly this century, because as we know, people lived in harmony with nature in Africa, as on every other continent, for many centuries. And it's this century that we've done this damage.
I mean, how do trees really grow in such a dry, sandy soil?
Well, it's not dry all the time. Of course, it rains a lot in some of these areas, but the trouble is that it's raining less, or it's raining more ferociously, or when it rains, the water simply runs off. The trees are adapted. Trees grow everywhere, practically everywhere on the planet, but they certainly grow in the Sahel, and they grow extremely well there. And what we're finding is that there are still areas of scrub and bushland and forest, but it's not just that they're disappearing. It's a lot of the communities aren't confident that they can actually take produce from these. In other words, they don't know if they own them or can work with them. So trade works in a number of ways. It's not simply just planting trees. We try and influence policy. We develop forest management plans, but we work very much with the government departments in the countries that we work to try and allow communities to manage their own forest governance, so then they can do so with confidence. And as well as that, then we do the tree planting and regeneration and soil conservation. But we also work very much with enterprise development, so setting up these communities so as they can get their own cooperatives together, be it shea butter or honey or whatever. And then we also provide food security and nutrition through nutrition gardens and planting trees as food. So it's in those four ways. It's not simply about halting desertification and education and training. It has to be on a multitude of levels to try and work with communities. We've taken 1.8 million people out of poverty and grown 22 million trees over the last 30 years. And we want to expand that. I mean, tree is growing. So it's a big task, but the task is getting bigger every year, even though we're growing and trying to address it.
And you work in 5 countries, don't you, across the region?
Yes, we work in Ghana, Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger, all in the Sahel and the west of Africa. And then we also work a bit on the east in Ethiopia. Ethiopia may seem like a richer country, but it's actually not. There are real areas of poverty still within it. As with Ghana, some of Ghana is pretty wealthy, but some in the north is pretty poor as well. And most of the ones on the west and in Ethiopia, they're all suffering from conflict as well. It's not an easy life at all for these people.
No, I'm sure it isn't. And under conflict, it's obviously all about self-preservation and preservation of your community. And it must be hard to get those messages across of having a longer term view by retaining forest, managing the forest and planting trees. But clearly you're successful at doing that. When you plant new trees, say next to an existing forest, have you observed over the 30 years how that ecosystem is going back to what it should be?
What our staff do in Burkina in particular, where I visited more, they're taking ground level studies of what we're doing when we get there, and they're looking at monitoring those. So we do have a fair bit of data, and we work in partnership with others. We're working on a really interesting project with Edinburgh University actually at the moment on satellite imagery and collecting the data. So we work in partnership with a lot of great organizations, be they international NGOs or UK agencies or even African agencies, to try and see what's there now and then try and measure what we're doing. I mean, it's all about being able to provide evidence. To be able to get funding, you provide evidence.
And using that evidence, has it influenced the species that you're planting, or are you mirroring what's there already?
There has been trials with different species in the past, but there's an awful lot of knowledge there already. So they know what needs done. And one of the things that we're learning from them is where we listen. That's the one thing we do, is we listen, because these guys are the land managers. These are the ones who've been struggling to grow crops for years in very difficult circumstances. So we'll come in and help them with some things that may have worked elsewhere in different communities. For example, we would dig what they call demi-lunes, little areas to patches where water can collect when water does come, and provide them training and tools to be able to do that. And then vegetables or crops would be able to grow in that. But what they've taught us is that they can add to that by planting a tree on the edge of it, and the tree survives as well, not just their crop. So it's mutual, but a lot of these men and women have been farmers for generation after generation. They know the land, they know what works, and they know what species work best as well. We also target very much working with women. Half of the women get married under the age of 18, and I think only 22% of the women generally overall that we work with in these communities are educated. But we've found that if we can educate the girls and work with women, say on social enterprises like shea butter cooperatives, then they are the ones who can actually dominate the purse strings for their children's food budgets. What came to me best when I was last in Burkina Faso, when I asked one of the women I was working with in a shea butter cooperative how Tree Aid had actually helped her. And she said very simply, my children can now go to school instead of collecting water every day. And it's that simple. It's not simply about providing shade or crops or stabilizing the soil or providing fruit. It's simply about what that means to her economically, that she can now afford to buy school books for her children. And she knows if the children are being educated instead of walking for water every day, that they'll have a better life. It's that simple.
It's just so wonderful to hear. And there's some great films available on the YouTube channel for Tree Aid, and also some great images of people being helped and working together in this way on the Tree Aid website, which we're going to have links to on the podcast. What has been surprisingly effective in your work? What's really sort of taken you back as a charity?
Well, the one thing that I think took us a little bit by surprise is what we call nutrition gardens. So we're planting trees with edible leaves. Now that I mean, it sounds, maybe as a forester, I was very naive when I first went out there, thinking that the trees would be doing all the things we expect trees to do, mainly stabilizing the soil, of course. So you're preventing erosion. But I didn't actually for 1 minute think that communities actually ate the leaves of trees, and they do. They turn them into very nutritious food, particularly in the dry season, when these trees actually provide green leaves, which there's very little else green in the dry season. So these gardens we grow trees just like crops, and we provide the tools and the training for them to do them all themselves. Mainly moringa and baobab species. And they actually pick the leaves. I thought initially that they were feeding them to their stock, their goats and cattle, but they're not. They boil them up into sauces and make really interesting food for themselves with it. So that has been extremely successful to the point that they just are planting bigger ones and more of them than we ever thought they would. And that's been rolled out in Burkina, Ghana, Niger. And the tree leaves are cropped about every 3 months. And then after 4 or 5 years, those trees can be planted out somewhere to be a proper tree, and then seed itself and do all the other things that trees will do in Africa. But in the meantime, it's a food crop, which astonished me.
I didn't know that either. That's wonderful. That's really wonderful.
And I guess the other thing that's been really successful, that more so than we thought even, was we have targets for social enterprises for example, shea butter or honey. And again, these are all run by women. And our target is perhaps to double the income that they have before. And we do this by helping them form a cooperative. So they're not doing it individually, and also getting rid of a middleman at market. The women then go themselves into the market and sell it. And they love that. Of course, they get a much better price and really good quality, and they're very proud of their product. But actually, sometimes we find the evidence is now showing that we're not only doubling the income, sometimes it's 5 to 10 times the income we've had. So that's been extremely successful.
And all of that boost of income, as you say, leads to education for the next generation, boosts their self-esteem, and it's very empowering, isn't it, to have your own money?
Helping people help themselves.
Yeah, that's what it's all about, isn't it? Well, I've heard about the Great Green Wall. That sounds just like the right type of wall. Tell us all about it.
It's amazing. The Great Green Wall really is amazing. So it's a fantastically ambitious project to create 8,000 kilometers of greenness, I suppose, from Senegal to Djibouti, right across Africa. And Tree Aid's really proud to be working with it's UNCCD, so it's the United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification. But more importantly, it's all coordinated by the African Union. So this is a big, ambitious project being delivered in Africa by Africans, and I think that's what's key. So, of course, there's international NGOs working to help do it as well, help achieve it, as is Tree Aid working with it. The most wonderful thing, though, is a film that was made, and unfortunately, its release has been delayed due to COVID. But I really hope it will come out soon, if not before the end of the year, by next year. And it's simply called The Great Green Wall. And I had a preview of it since TRIAD was involved with it and supported it. And it's not at all what I thought it was. I really, really would urge people to watch it when they get hold of it. It's, I suppose, a documentary by a Burkina musician, this wonderful woman called Ina Moja. She's delightful. She sings and plays, and she talks her way right across Africa, speaking to other musicians and talking all about the Great Green Wall. But some of it's pretty hard hitting. So she talks to communities of young men who are trying to migrate because of it and the difficulties they're having. She talks to victims of Boko Haram. She talks to a lot of people. It's very, very interesting. She herself has had the usual female genitalia mutilation and talks quite candidly about that. But despite that, it's a very upbeat film. And I think it sets out exactly what the issues are and why the Great Green Wall is needed. But essentially, it's 8,000 kilometres of greenness, mainly trees. Sometimes it will be quite wide and sometimes it'll be quite narrow, right across Africa. And it will help the whole of humanity, not just Africans, by storing carbon.
Gosh, that's incredible. And I think you've started, haven't you? And it's about 15% done. Is that right?
Yeah, it's slower. It's slower than I think a lot of people would like, but it is a big, ambitious project. But I think it has to happen. When you see the rate of desertification in these countries, something has got to happen to stop it. And it can be done. You know, mass tree planting projects have taken place around the world, most notably in countries like China. It can happen.
Are there any barriers to that, such as land ownership or lack of political will? Or is it such a widely understood concept that you don't have any issues like that?
Oh, there's always issues. I think funding is an issue. Land ownership is an issue. Governance, knowledge, conflict is a big issue. Just the things that are causing the problems in this part of Africa are also causing a problem with trying to get the Great Green Wall done. But the political will is there with the African countries that are involved. And every country that TRIAD works in is involved in the Great Green Wall. And the United Nations is right behind it as well. It will happen.
A lot of your work is in collaboration with other bodies. For example, Edinburgh University is involved. Have there been any particular findings from those studies that have been released, or anything that could be widely disseminated to the academic community that might influence other projects, perhaps in other places in the world?
Yes, I mean, our team in the African countries, our staff over there, regularly give talks to conferences in other African countries and in global countries. In fact, our operations director, George, came across to Oxford last year to talk at the Institute of Chartered Foresters conference. So we're very much into knowledge exchange, and we're very much into looking at the evidence that we've gathered through our work and how we can share that with others. An awful lot of international NGOs work together as well. We very much believe in partnership work. There isn't a way that we can do what we're doing without it. So we clearly don't want to duplicate work that someone else is doing. But one of the real successes of TRIAD is our approach to working with the communities. And over 30 years, we found that this is the best way to work. You know, you don't come in and spend money and leave again. It really is working with communities, helping them to do what they already do, but do it better. And then doing bits that they find very difficult to do, such as communicating with the local government to try and work out forest government plans, management plans for areas that they live in that they feel they don't have any authority over, that they can actually do something with it. So it's areas like that where we can really help.
That's absolutely wonderful. And how can people listening get involved? How can they donate to TRIAD? Simply go to triad.org. A lot of our staff in the UK are there busy fundraising, from the general public, people who are listening, or from corporate donors. We work a lot with companies, both in the UK and globally. We very much want to hear from corporate donors, but anyone. We want to hear from other people. And you can help in all sorts of ways. You can really see where a small amount of money will go on the website. There's all sorts of things you can do to actually help. We plant a tree every 30 seconds, and we need
we need your money to help do that. But it's not just about money. You can follow the stories. You can become a supporter of trade, and you can follow individual, particularly women, who I just find so inspiring when I'm out there. You never go and visit these people whereby they don't have a huge smile on their face. I love that.
And have you got any other aspirations for the future as a charity? Or is it a question of just keep working more with other NGOs and delivering the Great Green Wall? Is there something else that you have in the pipeline?
I probably need to raise our game a little bit in policy influencing. We're very, very good at getting work done on the ground, and I think we're recognised for that. And we've had some international NGOs fund us for many years because they realise that we've got a good record on that. I think we need we do some of it, but I think we need to now start trying to influence more, trying to get the governments in the countries that we work to see how the environment is so closely linked to the difficulties of their conflict, of their poverty. It's trying to link those two and show evidence of how, if you protect the environment, you can help solve some of the other problems that you have.
I wonder finally, Shireen, what is your dream scenario?
Oh, my dream scenario is that the rains come regularly in this part of the Sahel, where the communities can grow their crops, the children can go to school, and they don't feel that moving to Europe is something that they have to do to survive, because many of them don't even survive trying to get there.
Thank you so much. What an absolutely inspiring and fascinating charity, one that I've always been right behind. And I hope that listeners will have a look at the Tree Aid website, and you can buy really great gifts for people for Christmas, for weddings and birthdays, and be part of a global community to make things better. Thank you so much, Shireen.
Thank you very much, and thank all your listeners for joining in for this. And as we all know, trees mean life.
You're listening to Tree Lady Talks, talking to...
I'm George Bazongo. I'm Director of Operation for Tree Aid based in Burkina Faso, Ouagadougou. And I'm an agronomist and environmentalist. I have 22 years experience working in rural area in Burkina and other countries in West Africa and East Africa as well, when I working previously. So my work are coming from the grassroots level to the level of director where I am today.
That's always the best way, isn't it? To know what it's like just from the grass level. So it really helps you with the job you're doing now. And what is the main role that you carry out? Are you focused on the Great Green Wall or on all of the projects?
Yes, I'm focused on all the projects. My role is to ensure that all the projects we are developing and we are implementing in the field filling to the Great Green Wall initiative objectives, as well as for the others. You have UNCCD, UN Conference to Combat Desertifications, for which Great Green Wall initiative also is filling. And we are partnering also with development partnership with government agents, government people, and civil society organization here, so that we are able to reach the targets of the communities and then the objective of the Green Wall initiative. The main targets are the rural communities for whom we are working in our organization.
How is the Great Green Wall progressing?
Okay. I can say that the Green Wall initiative, it's a good initiative, a good program for us, for the drylands of Africa. But unfortunately, if we take the past 10 years, the progress was really low. So according to the report released, I think, last month for the Green Wall initiative. But for us, what our work are really progressing in the last 5 years, I can say even the last 10 years, we really planted a lot of trees, and we have around 22 million trees. But not only this, we are also developing some enterprise work for the rural communities so they can make more money, have green jobs, and also to restore some land across all the countries we are working in. We think that, yes, we had some challenges to face to raise some money and some resources to develop projects and to implement in the field. But we think that the future will be better if all the parties, all the organizations, the corporate, the UN organization, the African Union, the government, they really desire to to put more money to achieve the objective of Great Green World Initiative. And we trust on this, and I think that we will achieve it.
That's excellent. Working together is so important in whatever we do.
Yeah.
And I really get a strong sense that not only are you changing the landscape, but you're really changing people's lives and improving their economic well-being and their social well-being. Is that correct?
Yes. As a tree aid, what we, in our objectives, we have to support community to make more money. Why money? Because people need to buy food. Because sometimes, in climate change impact, there is soil land degradations, so the food production also decreased. So the people will need to buy more money, more food, especially in the lean season, where it's really difficult. And also we need for education, we need to go to hospital, we need to build houses, we need to, for family affairs. So our work will support this community, helping communities really to make more money, to access to food, very rich in terms of vitamin, in terms of micronutrients for human body. So we are working to improve the community's livelihood in our countries of operation, which are Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger, Ghana, and Ethiopia.
So wonderful to hear about the better nutrition and the better education. It has such an upward spiral. That's fantastic. And what are the barriers and the problems that you have in achieving this ambitious project, apart from money?
Yes, yeah. The barrier is sometimes we are still working in hard environment conditions, which we are facing some climate shock and stresses. Which sometimes you can invest, plant trees, restore land, but if you have a regular, climate crisis, which make the community really worse because they cannot get more money, they have to flee the houses to go in town or in other countries to make more money. So it's really some challenges we are facing in the villages and where we are working. So what also we are as big challenges is, but not for us, but sometimes we see that there is some weak collaboration between partners. So that is something, and we are happy to see that in the Green World objectives and the land degradation partnership, we need to work together to face climate change impact for these communities.
It really sounds like a race against time, because I understand that the region is one of the fastest affected by climate change. And yet the tree planting will help improve the environment. Will it reverse some of the desertification?
Yes. Currently, honestly, we can say that the investments, all our work we are doing, and all the partners is below the target, and to have also the balance between land degradation and land restoration, forest degradation, forest restorations, and food and nutrition insecurity, and improving food and nutrition security for these communities. Why? So we are really beyond this target. But we can believe and we can hope that with having some vision, like Triad, we are thinking about some many years, how we can, what investment even countries need, to balance between the degradation and the restoration and to improve the community's livelihood. So we are planting trees, and trees really help to improve soil fertility, to infiltrate the water in the soil to make it available for the crop productions, and also to improve the human being, because you have the shadow where people can rest, and we have also, it's a kind of sink of carbon. So that's a very, very important. And so some are looking at trees only for the fruit, but we are looking at trade more than this. And also our work we are doing is not only planting trees, it's also to supporting communities to develop some enterprises and then to make some green jobs, and then they will not move again, we stay, and the communities will be well for at this time. Yeah.
And presumably it's being taught in schools. Are the young people excited and understand how beneficial planting trees is beyond having something to eat, but the long-term benefits?
Yes, because our target, we have children, people at school, we have young people, and then we are working also, most of our beneficiaries are women. Why? Because they are part of the communities who are really harvesting the forest products for marketing, for processing, and for the families to eat. So if we target them, they can harvest in the sustainable manner. That's very important. For the young people, we involve them to be part of our activities, because we think that investing in young people and in women, we invest for the future. Why? Because they have what for women is clear, for young people, they will be the adults of the future. So raising awareness of these people about the environment, about the land degradation and the need of restoration, and also the cause, of the land degradation. So it will help them while they are starting to produce the food to take care of not destroying all the environment, but for the sustainable natural resources management. So that's what we are doing. And some of our targets are schools in our projects in Mali, in Burkina as well. And also we are partnering them and for environmental education, which is very important for this target in the communities.
Have you noticed a real increase in people's excitement when they start planting trees? Has it become a real movement in Burkina Faso and in Niger?
Yes, I can say that there is people now they trust, because by planting trees, by seeing the benefits of the trees, they're really exciting to be part of this movement. And hopefully all the government also, they started to invest more time, more resources, human and money in the tree planting and restorations in our countries. They are also developing and improving the policies and practices to make it more effective. So we think that this, and also we are seeing a lot of organizations like civil society organizations, international organizations like TreeAid and others, to be part of this movement by investing in this. We are not building, but not taking account of the environment. Now, this is a win-win to look at. This is very important to check. And also, we have to say that there is a big partnership which has coming on to face this challenge. Because what I said, the challenge is that The land degradation is growing fast, while the land restoration is really, low. So we need to move fast to be able to meet. While at the same time, while moving fast, we need to sensitize and create awareness for population to reduce the land degradation. We cannot stop, but we can reduce so that we can meet and have this balance. So this means that in country also, government also are really engaged and committed to this work.
That's very good to hear that the government's committed and you're working with other organisations, but you need money, don't you? And as any charity does. And one of the purposes of this podcast is not only to highlight the excellent work that you're doing, but to raise awareness. And the Tree Aid website provides some excellent and easy ways to donate. And I'm sure many of our listeners are already donating. Finally, Georges, what do you really wish for? If you could wave a magic wand, what is your great wish?
My great wish will be in the next 10 years to see more land covers by the biomass. If we have this, we have several benefits. Sink of carbon, reduction of carbon emissions, the weather will be good, will be better, will be improving soil fertility, people will grow more food, people will access to more forest products for marketing, so creating green jobs, and then also the life will be better for these rural communities for which we are really committed and working with.
Absolutely. That's fantastic. Thank you so much for your time. I greatly appreciate it. It's lovely to meet you.
Thank you, Sharon.
Welcome to Bell Martin. Thank you so much for joining us. Bell, we've invited you to speak today because you've just recently carried out the most incredible fundraising. But before we talk about that, tell us a little bit about yourself, please.
I'm a forestry tree nursery manager, so I work in Christian nurseries, and we look after about 18 million trees and around about 10 million saleable trees every year. So we supply to forestry industry, so we are the starting block of your forest and woodland.
What inspired you to fundraise for Tree Aid in the first place?
I found it was something I could totally and utterly relate to, as it was regarding tree nurseries herself over in Africa. And as you know, I work in a tree nursery here, so it just felt like it was the perfect thing, perfect kind of charity that would fit into what I believe in. That, and I find that charities that help and support and aid people out of poverty is always the best.
How did you raise the money?
I raised the money through a Just Giving page, and I bombarded my social media massively to get people, especially from the forest industry and other friends and family, to support.
Let's not keep people in suspense any longer. What did you actually do?
Well, I went around the North Coast 500s. I did 516 miles on my bike, and I camped every night, and I had to take all my stuff there and all my stuff back. So I was completely on my own and self-sufficient.
Good heavens, that's incredible. For those who are listening who don't know the 500, it's around the Scottish coast, isn't it? And it's becoming really, really well known.
Yeah, it's the north of Scotland, so it's the whole of the Highlands, and it starts off in Inverness and finishes at Inverness, and it goes all the way up to Durness, to John O'Groats, and then all the way back down. And it's classed as one of the best scenic routes to do, and it's in like the same kind of genre as Route 66.
Oh, it's absolutely brilliant. I mean, it's an area that Noel and I know quite well, because after we got married in Gretna Green last year, we went to stay in the Scary Hotel, which our friends own, just near Durness. And we've been there many, many times, and we've really noticed that it's a real sort of event now to do the 500 in all sorts of different vehicles. But to cycle it, how long did it take you?
It took me 8 days to do. So I did it actually. I did it really nice. Most people do you do it in 6 days, but I wanted to actually see the scenery as well. And just in case I had a puncture as well, so I gave myself 8 days.
8 days? I thought you were going to say 8 weeks. But I mean, it's not all flat and the weather isn't always calm. Tell us about some of the challenges you had on the way.
I think I must admit I wasn't at the start. I wasn't really prepared for what I was going into, because when I was training all through the summer, I just had beautiful weather and the days that I went out were lovely. And then as soon as I went for my first day from Inverness to Lochcarron, yeah, the rain just came with me. And yes, I don't think I saw much of the West Coast at all, because it was all like rain and wind and mist. But I can say I certainly know what's the difference between West Coast weather and East Coast weather, that's for sure.
So what kept you going through that difficult time? You're on your own, you're on your bike, the wind's against you, your face is splattered with rain. How did you keep going?
I think it's because I was doing it for charity that I couldn't have an excuse to. It was more mental going with, like, if it wasn't for charity, I think I probably would have come home actually. But it's the fact that I was doing it for a cause, and once it got to like the third day, it just became like a routine. And I wasn't, by that time, the weather didn't faze me. It's actually probably the pure satisfaction from getting from one bit to the other and knowing that you did it yourself and you pedalled all that way.
Well, for those who are into cycling, what type of bike do you have?
Actually, this is the most funniest part. I did it in my boyfriend's mother's hybrid bike that I borrowed. There was nothing special about it. It was nothing, like, it wasn't top of the range or anything like that. It was just a normal hybrid bike.
And what were the highlights of the journey?
Was getting to John O'Groats actually, and knowing that I got to the top. I was like, wow. Actually, I think it was every day when you had to do, like, in the West Coast, when you had to do all the climbs, I think it was like the full satisfaction of getting to the top and then just picking my feet up and then just going downhill for miles and miles. That was amazing. One of the other highlights was the fact that the people that I met around on my little trip, because it was those people that I'd never even met, and they ended up donating £20, £100 into the Just Giving page as I was going around, and who I was meeting. And also, like, say thank you to the many people that shoved chocolate out their doors, their car, and gave it to me. That was amazing.
What did you learn about yourself during that journey?
I'm a little tough cookie when I want to be, and I quite that. And also, I'm extremely organised now. Let's just say I can pack up 4 panniers and pack up a 1-man tent on the rain in literally 40 minutes and get on my bike and on the road. Where it used to take me like an hour and a half or something to get ready for work.
Any ideas of another fundraising event you might do in the future?
I would start to go and do something like that again. Maybe not the North Coast 500, or maybe I should weather watch the next time. That would be better. Yeah. and pick a better week off work. I certainly definitely would do something similar, or go on a tour that way. I absolutely thoroughly enjoyed it, and it was such an amazing experience.
So if people want to donate, where can they donate? Tell us how they can give some money to Tree Aid through your fundraising activity.
My Just Giving page is still active, so you can either find me on Twitter, which is at Bell Martin, or you can go onto the Just Giving and you can just put in Bell's North Coast 500 and you'll see my page and you can donate through there.
That's Bell's North Coast 500 on Just Giving. That's fantastic. Well, thank you so much for your time, Bell. That's an incredible journey. Thank you.
Oops, look out. There she goes now. There's our Bell.
Welcome to
James Ogilvie.
It's so lovely to have you on the podcast. I mean, we know each other as well, so it's always a pleasure to see you. James, you've had such an interesting career. Could you just outline the highlights, please?
I suppose it all started for me a long time ago, actually in 1970, and I was still at school. And the Forestry Commission had opened its Northern Research Station just outside of Edinburgh. And I went along in my school uniform to see what all the fuss was all about, and decided that forestry really was what I wanted to be involved in. So I went to Oxford and I studied agricultural and forest science at a time when you could do that. You can't do it anymore. And then after that, I was lucky enough to join the commission. And my kids think I'm a dinosaur because 38 years later, I retired. And these days, it's very unusual to work for one organization for, your whole career. But it doesn't feel like it, Sharon, because I've done all sorts of things in that time. And I've worked spent time in Africa working there. And I've worked in England and Scotland and done all sorts of different jobs. And it's just been an absolute blast. I wouldn't have changed a thing.
Well, not only have you carried out different roles within the Forestry Commission, but the Commission itself has changed so much. I mean, there's such a great emphasis on biodiversity and social engagement as well. So I can easily see how a long career working for the Forestry Commission must have felt like several.
Yeah, it has. And I mean, I've been fortunate to do all of the three aspects of sustainable forest management. So the economic and the environmental, and then my last few years was as head of social policy, which in some ways was the most interesting because it's about where people meet forestry, and in a sense that's what forestry is all about at the end of the day. And the people side, I think, is the one that government should be devoting a lot more of its attention to. It's still very much the sort of various parts of what were the Forestry Commission are still quite hung up on the economic side, because that's why the commission was formed in the first place. My strong view is that trees, woods, for the benefit of people and communities and society is really what government should be doing, and then they should be leaving the kind of more commercial aspects to the private sector, who do it very well, frankly.
It's so linked together, isn't it? And tell us about your personal interests.
Like I say, I've always had an interest in trees and woods. I don't know why, because there hasn't been a kind of family connection at all. But I think it's something to do with being taken, for walks in the woods as a kid. We were taken into the forests of East Anglia. We lived in Peterborough. I grew up sort of in Peterborough, and then we moved to Scotland. And we were fortunate to have a place with a big kind of garden. But I roamed around the countryside, getting up to all sorts of mischief and shooting rabbits with my air rifle and kind of loving that kind of a lifestyle. So that's why I went into forestry. And of course, the trouble is that as you progress in your career, you end up working in an air-conditioned office typing on a computer.
Yeah, I know. So tell us about what you do in your spare time.
I do a lot of things in my spare time. I mean, one of them actually, which is key for me, is I'm very fortunate to part own a small woodland in Northumberland, and I spend lots of time there, walking the talk and planting and thinning and pruning and all, doing a lot of work there. And then, as you say, my other sort of big interest has been hills and mountains and climbing, and I've been very lucky to climb all the Munros in Scotland. Those are 282 mountains above 3,000 feet, which is new money. That's 914 meters. And then again, it kind of happened by accident, which sounds a bit strange, but the last several years have been devoted to climbing the 7 summits.
Yes, that's 7 summits in 7 continents. Let's not be modest about this, James. And you've written the most entertaining book, Getting High, The World at Your Feet, which is available everywhere you would want to see it. And this is no mean feat, is it? Tell us about some of the most beautiful and the most hair-raising moments.
Goodness, well, I mean, I could spend hours talking about it. I can give a 1-hour presentation on Everest alone. I have to make a little disclaimer, because although the book's called Getting High, if I ever give a talk to schools, and I give quite a lot of talks, I have to tell my audience that it's nothing to do with illicit substances and everything to do with altitude. It's about the 7 summits. It's about the highest mountain on each of the 7 continents. So that includes Antarctica, of course, North America, South America, Asia, Europe, Australia. And then, of course, I started off by climbing Kilimanjaro. I had a week off work, a friend in Nairobi, and this kind of serendipitous series of events where I turned up at the foot of the mountain and managed to find a group who were climbing the next day, because most people climb up Kilimanjaro weeks or months in advance. So I just kind of landed up there and set off, which is just as well, because I didn't have time. If I'd left it another day, I wouldn't have had time to climb it. And then it was Aconcagua in South America after that. And pretty soon it was like, well, I'm halfway around the 7 summits. At some stage, I'm going to have to climb Everest, which is a very serious undertaking. So I'm really, really fortunate, Sharon, because I've climbed each one of these 7 summits at the first go, and I only know of one other person who's done that. And the other thing I've been doing sort of in parallel as training has been climbing the Munros. And I finished my Munros about 4 or 5 years ago and kind of did a bit of research and thought, am I the first person to have climbed all the Munros and the 7 summits?
Oh.
And I realised, no, I wasn't actually. The first person to have done it was a Scots woman. So there you are.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. That's really good. And the reason why we're talking to you, as well as being really interesting, is because you've had a lifelong interest in tree aid and you've raised a lot of money. So tell us all about your involvement with tree aid.
That's right. Well, tree aid was it's been my charity of choice for a very long time. And I can remember when it was formed because it was about the same at the time as the whole Bob Geldof, Band-Aid, Live Aid, all of that. And somebody who I knew in the Forestry Commission, a guy called John Fletcher, he died a few years ago, but he was one of the founders. I knew John through the Forestry Commission, and climbing mountains is quite a selfish thing, Sharon. It's quite an ego-driven thing, and it's difficult for the people you leave behind. You're worrying about your family and friends, and so it's partly to sort of assuage that conscience, that sort of selfishness that I decided I wanted to raise money for tree aid. So every climb that I've done, I've done that, and I'm very proud of the fact that I have raised a fair bit of money for tree aid over the years. And I know tree aid because I went to Ethiopia earlier this year actually to see some of their work at first hand. And so I know that the money that's given to them goes straight to where it's needed and does terrific benefit on the ground and empowers villages and communities through what trees and woods have to offer.
So James, apart from the magnificent fundraising, tell us about your role within tree aid.
Well, my role now is as a business ambassador. And so I'm there really on hand to help where I can. I have been involved in quite a lot of the seminars, and I've given presentations in the past. My hope is that I can continue to be an ambassador for tree aid and basically tell people about the great work that they're doing.
So you went to Ethiopia earlier this year. What really impressed you about the work of tree aid?
Well, just to stress, part of the reason I went to Ethiopia was that I was on a safari in Kenya with some Kenyans who I know. We actually went very close to the Ethiopian border up at Lake Rudolph. So I paid for my own way to get to Ethiopia. And what really impressed me was the energy and enthusiasm and commitment of the local communities to trees. And we had many meetings with local sort of councils where you would sit down. It was all quite formal. You'd sit on a low seat under a tree and you'd talk about the things that they were doing. Then you'd go and see it firsthand. And a lot of it was being done by the women. And tree aid wasn't just about planting trees. It was about helping them to make products from trees and things like that. And also building materials as well for storing and that kind of thing. And some of the testimonials that you heard, obviously through a translator, from local people at firsthand were very moving. And it was tree aid's one of those charities that people give to in this country, and they very rarely have a chance to see at firsthand what's going on. So it was a great privilege for me to be in that position and get real insights as to the benefits that tree aid was doing in Ethiopia and in other places too. I'm very fortunate to still be keeping very much involved in trees and woods because in my retirement, I'm doing a lot of work for some charities. So I'm a non-exec director of the Woodland Trust and the Borders Forest Trust. And I'm involved in an estate up in the Highlands called Curragh, which is into rewilding, which is very exciting. And the stars have never been as well aligned as they are at the moment towards trees and woods. And although they're not the total solution to climate change, they are a huge part of the solution in terms of, God's carbon capture and storage devices. And we need to be planting a lot more. I think politicians have woken up to this. It's mainstream now.
I absolutely agree with you. It's never been more important. And I think things are going to escalate quite quickly because I hear many people say that the pandemic, obviously, it's a terrible time for everybody, but what's coming in climate change, if we don't make the right choices now and act now, it's going to be far worse. It's going to affect where people live, how people can eat, absolutely every single facet of life. And we do have the power to make those changes now. And it's so good to see so many organisations coming together, including Tree Aid, to combat that, with the Great Green Wall, for example. And finally, James, what is your dream scenario for the future? You're looking back at your long career. You've got loads more work to do with your voluntary roles and your non-executive director roles. Tell us, what is your dream scenario?
I think my dream scenario is less of a personal one and more of a scenario for the planet, because as David Attenborough said, we're the first generation to really wake up to what climate change is doing, and possibly the last one to be able to fix it before tipping points, even if we haven't already reached that. And to me, the dream scenario is one where we do have a woodland culture where people really respect and appreciate and are, kind of devoted to the whole thing around trees and woodlands. And that means very much the urban context. And I think it's tragic that, the majority of the world's population now live in the urban areas. And it's tragic to me that we're still seeing developments that don't respect trees and woods. I mean, we all depend on the environment and what it can produce for our survival. And it's easy to living in an urban environment to lose sight of that, but we lose sight of that at our peril. And we're just stewards of the earth. We've got to find a new paradigm in terms of regarding the earth and her resources as something to be exploited. We've got to change to one where we believe it's about stewarding and about passing on to the next generation. Because if we don't do that, frankly, there's not a lot of hope for our species in the future. So that's my kind of dream. It's more of a dream for the planet and how the planet is treated than a personal dream.
Lots of people just need to be fed easy solutions that they can do now as well. And we in the arboricultural and forestry industry and all the land-based industries have a real responsibility to communicate that clearly. And you've done that so well. So thank you so much, James. It's a pleasure to talk to you.
Absolute pleasure, Sharon. Thank you very much.
Oh, that was interesting when Shireen mentioned Band-Aid.
Oh God, it takes me back. I was a waitress at the time. I couldn't wait to finish my shift at the tea room so that I could get home and watch it. What were you up to?
Well, I was working in the music industry in 1985, and in fact all of the 80s, a decade that I simply didn't know anything about. We were working out of the studio that eventually Stock Aitken and Waterman ended up buying. And when Band-Aid was on, it was absolutely enormous. I mean, it was just extraordinary.
It was great, and actually it really sparked consciousness in people to help. And so it's so great to see what Tree Aid have done and are doing now with the Great Green Wall project.
I must say desertification is a word that I hadn't heard of before, but that's just me. I'm sure that's well known to a lot of people.
Well, it's whether people know it or not, it's a big deal and it's happening now. And the Great Green Wall is going to really help reverse that trend. And so important to help people help themselves. And good to see how women are being helped, having their own economic stability and able to send children to school, because that's the future, isn't it?
And very much like Bob Geldof was so passionate about raising money for Band-Aid, so all these people are as well. It's the only way that they can actually generate enough money to create the projects that they're creating, and good on them.
Yep, it's a charity. It's a great website, and there are so many good ways to give. You can donate a single gift or regularly, or you can fund individual projects, and it's just some really good films on their website, which we're going to have a link to, aren't we, on our website.
So what have we got planned in the future?
Well, the next episode, which is coming out very soon, is going to be Trees and Literature and Art, and we're interviewing two fantastic authors and an artist, with the oak tree as a main feature. The sort of relationship you can build with a tree.
You love an oak tree, don't you?
I love an oak tree, who doesn't? We're so pleased that the podcast is reaching so many people and all over the world. And it's given us the idea to have a tree manager special, a global one. And we've already secured Matt Wells from Santa Monica. We know there are listeners in Argentina, Indonesia, Brazil, Mexico, Australia, South Africa, all of the European countries. If you manage trees, if you like this podcast, get in touch with us. You can do that by Twitter at thetreelady67, not my age, or by emailing Sharon at sharonhosegoodassociates.co.uk. We're really friendly.
We've got a Facebook page as well, haven't we?
Yeah, tell us about that, Noel.
Facebook page is facebook.com/Sharon Hosegood Associates.
And where can people find these podcasts, and how else can they get in touch with us?
Yeah, the podcast is available all over the place. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Podcast Addict, Deezer, you name them, it just goes on and on and on. You can pretty much find us everywhere.
It's really good. And what we're trying to do is build a bit of a community here, and don't forget the Christmas party. Details to follow.
There is a Christmas party coming up. I have no idea who's doing the catering. I guess it will be you. It might be me. Anyway, in the meantime, thank you very much for listening.
See you next time.
Goodbye.
Bye.